Let's move on. Enda McGinley is on the line. Niall McCoy is with us as well. Good morning, lads. How you doing?
Good morning, man.
Not too bad, folks.
Enda, I'm going to start with you and talk a little bit about the qualifier record of Kieran McGeeney. It's somebody who you obviously would have come up against in your own playing career. Geezer has this weird reputation really as a manager where people kind of query his success, and yet we've done this graphic and stuck it out over social over the last 24 hours or so, but his record in the qualifiers is one of the best records of any manager in any sport in the world. If we were just playing qualifiers, everybody would say he is a phenomenal manager. The win ratio is 86%. It's 25 wins from 29. One of those was the games that they didn't win was a draw against Antrim in 2010. The other ones were 3 defeats. Why is Kieran McGeeney such a good manager in the qualifiers?
Yeah, good question, because his record in Ulster is 0%, which the difference there is unbelievable. So, and that's not against. He's played down and Fermanagh, for example, in Ulster, where really he Armagh would have been favourites coming into both them games, and yet suffered losses. So his record in the qualifiers is something else. But I think it's as much how a team approaches the qualifiers. I think an awful lot of them, sort of Division 3, Division 4 sides, even some of the Division 2 sides, they have no real aspirations from what I can see whenever they go into the qualifiers. And I think we've seen that this year again, that there's been a lot of pretty poor performances, if truth be told, in the qualifiers. And I think if teams don't really fully embrace it, then they're going to be easily taken care of. I think whenever a team gets defeated in their provincial championship, they can be completely flat. And if they are completely flat and have no real aspirations, well, then they're going to get beat. I know for Tyrone, Mickey Hart probably has a right good record in the qualifiers as well. Now, we would be a strong team, so you'd be expected to come through it. But again, we had full aspirations of still doing something at the latter stage. So McGeeney somehow must have been able to instill in that Armagh squad that no matter about the provincial loss, that they still were able to actually do something that year. And if they have that confidence, then they go in hungry into them games and they move on. What he's done this year after Fermanagh, and it's pretty clear, he's come out a couple of times, he has used all the criticism, the very valid criticism to be fair, after the Fermanagh defeat, and he's used that in the good old-fashioned sense to get the wagon circled up, and away they've went. And they've had relatively favourable draws in the qualifiers. Again, there's a lot of teams in there. I think they've played Sligo and Westmeath. Westmeath were in a poor way of going. Sligo weren't exactly pulling up trees this year either, so that's been a lovely progress for them. And it's funny up here, the discourse from the Armagh sort of public is that Roscommon's a perfect draw for them, because it's a good test to see if they're ready or not for the qualifiers. Because if they got another easy team, they'd be thinking we could go into the qualifiers or the Super 8s and get hammered in 3 by 3 big teams, whereas Roscommon they're seeing as sort of that almost top tier team. So if they can take Roscommon, they'll feel very worthy of that Super 8 berth. So Armagh have regained huge confidence and are now facing the toughest draw of this round of the qualifiers with significant confidence.
Now, McCoy of Gaelic Life, what's your take on the whole McGeeney phenomenon? Trying to just thinking about it, obviously his desire for his teams to be super fit, that benefits the qualifiers and the routine of week on, week out games. So maybe there's some kind of sense of benefit there. And then the other thing is mindset, and like his own mindset as a player obviously is something that he has somehow been able to transmit to his teams, but just in this exclusive window of time when the qualifiers are on.
Yeah, and that is a turn to that Laois defeat. There's only one loss after the whole substitution debacle in 2016 anyway. Armagh boys had a good qualifier record. I think, they were going through the front door most of the year since 2001, but 2007 was the first year they would have lost 2 games in a row. They lost in Ulster up in Donegal, and then they lost out to Derry and Clonus. They just always sometimes they seem to drift away when it comes to the qualifiers, but Armagh boys sort of give it a good rattle, and shows Kieran still continuing that condition. I agree at Enda there. I do think Roscommon is probably the ideal draw. People were looking Laois because it would have been on paper the easiest, but Laois have been a bit of a bogey team. But Roscommon are a big physical team. They're the sort of team that should tell us a lot more where Armagh are at, and it's very hard to judge where Armagh are at. Their first 11 games in league and championship this year were against Division 3 opposition. They played Clare, who are obviously Division 2, and they very nearly exited the competition. So it's a real step up. It'll tell us where they are. It'll tell us a lot about this team. And as Enda said, it's a sort of match, if you did get through playing Laois and went into the last 8 in a group that could potentially be Derry or Dublin, Donegal and Tyrone. Looking at what happened last year against Tyrone, you could be in big trouble. So I'm glad it's Roscommon. I see it as a 50-50 game. It's a game that can win. But as I say, Armagh at the moment is just very hard to judge. But McGeeney has sort of rallied the troops, and he does take a lot of the flack off the players, as we saw after the Fermanagh match. He is very quick to divert the criticism onto himself, which he has done after defeats ever since he's been there. They showed a lot of fight back against Clare to hit 1-5 without reply. It was more Clare claps maybe than Armagh winning, but they're still there, and it's been 2005 and 2006 since Armagh last reached consecutive All-Ireland quarter-finals. So that in itself, if they get past Roscommon, is an achievement.
Now, he's got a relatively spiky relationship with the media, and it's unfortunate because certainly any of the conversations you'd have with him down in the years, they're always interesting. He always has an interesting take on the general state of the game, the state of the coverage of the game and everything in between. How has his relationship been over the last kind of 18 months? Because he did come out and very sternly round on the critics after the Clare game, and it's hard to know if he had a point. I'm not reading enough of the local press and the local coverage of him.
I'd be more interested in his relationship with the fans, because I thought it was quite interesting that he came out and took issue with the fans that left the match early and said just to have some faith in the boys. I was speaking to Jim McCoy during the week, and he was saying it had shades in 1993 when they had that famous fight back against Fermanagh when they had 3 goals in the last few minutes, and McCoy managed that team, and McGeeney would have been out with injury that day. And I'm more interested in that side of it. Like, what you're going to get as a media with McGeeney. He, as you say, when you do get talking to him, he's absolutely first class, but he doesn't do it a whole pile, and that's just the way it is. That's the way he'll always be. He's not going to change that. But I think he would like to see a bit more sort of faith and support. Not all the Armagh fans, because they'll bring a big crowd wherever they went, but a lot left early against Clare. There's a lot of people in Armagh that he still has to win over. That's a fact. There's still a lot of people that aren't overly pleased with how things are going, which I find a bit harsh, especially when you're considering that he's basically working up around 8 players that would have featured against Tyrone and Kildare in their last couple of matches last year. So it's a very young team. He's calling for patience. It is a team that requires a bit of patience, and they're underdogs for a reason this weekend. So it'll just be interesting. Armagh will bring a huge support to O'Meara Park, but it'll just be interesting to see the reaction if they maybe get a difficult start, because I think that's quite a big possibility. Roscommon will really, really push them hard in the first few minutes, and Armagh have shown in recent years that when a team get a run in them, they do find it very difficult to stop them.
Enda, just to take that point from Niall on a little bit further then, if you look at what he's done with Armagh over the past couple of years, you wouldn't necessarily say that they've overachieved, but as Niall says there, if they win this weekend, it'll be the first time they've reached back-to-back quarter-finals since 05 and 06. So that would constitute a big overachievement if you look at it in black and white terms, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Two quarter-finals back-to-back coming from a team that's been in Division 3 would be very impressive. I was thinking back whenever Joe was asking Niall the question previously. Maybe the biggest difference is that pressure. Whenever the team's really under pressure and there's all the hype and the build-up around a provincial championship tie, that's a huge difference to the back door, where essentially a team is forgotten and the spotlight is completely off the team. And maybe them Armagh players are more comfortable whenever there's slightly less pressure on them. And with McGeeney, and we've seen it in Kildare too, McGeeney's just one of them players that, because of his reputation as a player, because of what he done as a player, because of how he carries himself, he is a story all of his own. So that always follows Armagh around, and coming into the really big games, the big provincial championship games, then there's huge talk about that, and maybe that's a pressure that the team doesn't quite need. But in terms of overall progress, I suppose people are holding Kieran McGeeney to a very high standard because of who he was and what he done as a player, as I said. And maybe the artillery isn't quite there in Armagh. There's some sort of issue with Crossmaglen, which hasn't helped, because bottom line, Crossmaglen's the strongest club, or the strongest pool of players in Armagh. Yes, they didn't win, or they've been just not as strong of late, but to have no Crossmaglen players on the team, and to have a history that there might be a bit of an issue between you and Crossmaglen, doesn't exactly bode well, and I think that has weakened them too whenever the team hasn't been going well.
Yeah, Roscommon are fairly strong favourites to win that game, and I can really, you can understand that, certainly the background that they've come from, the success that they've had under Kevin McStay over the last while. I did want to move on and just ask a little bit about Fermanagh before we get into Tyrone. A lot of people are predicting that Fermanagh are going to shock Kildare this weekend, and that Kildare need to be wary after last week. But like, it wouldn't be that much of a shock if the team, which was so brilliant in Ulster all the way up to the Ulster final, puts in an excellent performance against the Kildare team, who've really put one really good performance out there against Mayo. It's just that the recency bias of that is making people assume that this is a foregone conclusion, and it doesn't have the bang of a foregone conclusion at all, Enda.
Yeah, it sort of has a mirror of the Cork and Tyrone game as well, and to a certain extent Laois and Monaghan. For a lot of these round 4 teams, we're not really quite sure where they're at. They have had some decent results this year, and then most of the teams have had some awful results this year. So for Fermanagh, they had that brilliant result against Monaghan. They had a very good result against Fermanagh, a very credible league campaign. So Fermanagh are probably one of the most consistent teams. Yes, they got a bad hammering in the Ulster final, but conceding the 2 sort of first half goals sort of finished that. Sort of opened up Fermanagh and meant that they had to come out. For Kildare, you're absolutely right. Kildare, how do we trust Kildare? They were on a 12-match losing streak. Now, they were physically strong and sort of bullied Derry out of the way, and I would fear that that's what might happen against Fermanagh this weekend. They were brilliant, obviously, against Mayo, but that's their one big performance, their one big win in over a year. Now, we'll see whether Cian O'Neill, having taken that stance and sort of led the county and got a county in behind him, whether he's able to build on that momentum now and push Fermanagh aside. They certainly will have a better quality side than Fermanagh, without a doubt. But Fermanagh will be really well organised. Kildare seem to have struggled with that style in the past against, obviously, Carlow this year. So yes, it will be a big test for Kildare. But if there's any sort of substance to Kildare, if there's any substance to this momentum that they've built, then they should be able to take care of Fermanagh. Because bottom line, Fermanagh, I heard from a relatively well-placed source that before the Ulster final against Donegal, Rory Gallagher, now probably it was tongue-in-cheek, but he pretty much had said in a wee offside remark, look, if we win the Ulster title, we'll phone up Croke Park and we'll say, no, play away with 7 in the Super 8 because we're not interested. Fermanagh were only interested in that provincial title. They know that they're probably not at that Super 8 level, and they've no real interest in getting a number of hammerings, and the defeat to Donegal in the Ulster final would have only reinforced that deep-seated notion within themselves. So I think Fermanagh will struggle whenever the battle really comes on. I think Fermanagh will struggle in terms of their real belief and their real desire to actually make it to the Super 8, and I think Kildare should have that. Should have that, sorry.
No, just on that, I mean, as a Kildare supporter, you'd be a little bit concerned that the Stephen Poacher inspired Carlow performance is exactly what Kildare are going to face this weekend against Fermanagh, and as Enda pointed out, they didn't really know how to deal with it then. You'd hope that having come through that experience and maybe changed the team quite significantly in the meantime, that actually they would probably have learned enough, but you would be taking nothing for granted.
No, and you can maybe guarantee that Rory was possibly trying to get in touch with Turlock O'Brien or something this week, or he certainly would have watched a lot of videos from that match, because it's going to be a bit of deja vu. Fermanagh, for me, and is completely right. It was Ulster title for Fermanagh is just the holy grail at the moment. But I think Rory Gallagher is such a motivator now, such a players manager, that he will be able to get them back up for this match. And I really foresee this being an extremely difficult match for Kildare. And I actually fancy Fermanagh to frustrate them enough to come through it. The one thing with Fermanagh's game plan is it's a bit like Donegal under Jim McGinley. It's about staying ahead and protecting the lead. And they didn't concede a goal against Armagh, didn't concede a goal against Monaghan, and they were able to get home. Once Donegal hit that first goal against them, you can near have blown the full time whistle then. So, but they've had a nice break since then. They've had enough time to regroup and recover, and while Kildare were able to come after Derry and push them around, even though Derry kept many men back, this Fermanagh backline is set up a lot more. There's a lot more finesse in their defensive system at the moment, and I think they can keep Kildare to a very low score. I think they can get enough scores on the board to get over the line, and I think after the highs of the Mayo match, Kildare can hit the ground very quickly here.
All right, so you're actually predicting a Fermanagh win there. Niall, just to get your thoughts briefly on the Cork-Tyrone game. Are Tyrone just going to win this game before we get into the full analysis with Enda? Are they your prediction for that one?
Yeah, I can't see anything but a Tyrone win by maybe 5 or 6 points. I think they'll get over the line. I don't think they've ever beaten Cork. I think they only played twice in the championship, but I don't foresee any major difficulties when push comes to the shove.
All right. Niall, great stuff. Thanks very much for joining us. That's Niall McCoy from Gaelic Life. You should check out their website, get your hands on an actual paper copy of the newspaper. It's great stuff. And let's move on then and talk about Cork and Tyrone. Just reading some of the pre-match press, there's like a sense that a lot of the Tyrone players didn't do themselves justice the last day out against Cavan. This is the qualifier, so that doesn't automatically mean that they're going to up their game, and it's hard to know whether or not the trend is their friend at the moment. What's your take?
Oh, absolutely. It is really hard to know where Tyrone's at. I was down at the Cavan match, and it was a real struggle. It was a struggle to watch as a supporter. It was a struggle to watch. Just there was so little sort of fluidity. There was so little real quality about Tyrone's play. In the first 20 minutes, they definitely were trying to hit the full forward line of Conor McCalliskey and Richard Donnelly, but the ball just, they may as well have been kicking it off a wall. It was coming out as fast as it went in. And then whenever that wasn't working for Tyrone, they reverted back to their plan A, which is running the ball, which is effective for them. But they were coming into a crowded Cavan defence, and so there was just that thing we see in the modern game that we all dislike, this sort of soloing on the spot and the lateral passes or the reverse passes under no pressure at all. And there was so little inventiveness from Tyrone to sort of break that down or to bring anything different to the game whenever the full forward proposition wasn't working for them. So that was a concern. They got lorded at midfield by Gearóid McKiernan. Now, Gearóid McKiernan on his day is a difficult handful for any team in the country. But Tyrone got beat in midfield with Gearóid McKiernan, and again that was a concern. In terms of defensively, Tyrone were still solid. Cavan were able to kick a couple of points from distance, but Tyrone were still solid. But Cavan versus Down, Cavan were horrendous against Down, and they were horrendous against Donegal. So people were saying that the Tyrone-Cavan game should be very tight because they were giving Cavan the credit for winning division or coming through Division 2 and getting to Division 1. But Cavan in the championship has been pretty poor. So again, it's trying to think what level of team did Tyrone manage to beat. I think their Meath performance was great because Meath were on a real crest of the wave in that game, and there was a huge energy behind Meath in that game. But Tyrone have been trying so far this year to get a plan B, and it didn't seem to be working. And then Conor McCalliskey hit a brilliant vein of form in the early rounds of the championship, which he carried on to sort of the early part of Meath, but he has sort of went off the boil. And with Mark Bradley injured and Conor McCalliskey off the boil, we're back to try and sort of Ronan O'Neill again, and he's come up short a couple of times. And so Tyrone are still searching. They're still searching for this attacking play that they need if they're going to threaten the big teams, and to combine that with their decent defence and their very good counter-attacking game. But I'm just not convinced from what I've seen against Cavan.
Right, okay. Like, obviously, we don't want to look too far ahead. There could be, like, you can't really predict Cork either. They could well beat them at the weekend, and we might not be talking about this game. But ultimately, Mickey Harte does have to a certain extent think about the potential of facing Dublin in the Super Race. They will be playing them in Armagh if they win at the weekend. And ultimately, they need to be working on it now. I'm sure, as you say, they're working on the plan B, which isn't quite there, as you've said. They need to be working on it now, really, for it to be right for Dublin, despite the fact that fixture isn't even guaranteed. Yeah,
absolutely. And knowing Mickey Harte, he will always be one game at a time. It's always just the next game, and the next game is always the most important game. But deep down in Mickey Harte, he is always about winning the Sam Maguire, and he's always looking and working at his team to win Sam Maguire, even if the team would appear to many outsiders to not be, that they shouldn't even be thinking about that there. Mickey Harte will be thinking about the potential of taking down Dublin. And particularly from last year's All-Ireland semi-final, he'll have felt it was, and he came out and said it was just a day when everything sort of went wrong, and the early goal sort of scuppered their plans, and that they can still be competitive if they just tweak the plans a wee bit. He's been trying to tweak them plans, but I think he's been frustrated by maybe not having, by a few injuries that sort of have removed some of his options there, and then some players finding form and then losing form, and so his ability to try and formulate that second plan that I think he feels he needs to bring to the table against Dublin has been frustrated, and the qualifiers should give you that run to be able to develop that further, but to date it hasn't really done that. But absolutely I agree, he will have been thinking about Dublin and seeing now that you're potentially in the same half as Dublin in the Super 8s. Absolutely, that will be in the back of his mind. But Mickey will know about Cork. Our team always struggle, or my team, that team of the Naughties, always struggle against Cork. And whilst it's obviously two very different teams now, you don't sort of forget that. And Cork are unpredictable, and Cork don't fear Tyrone because they have a good record against us. So that them will be concerns. And again, Cork, Tipperary, they were a brilliant performance against Tipperary, hugely credible, and then horrible against Kerry. So what Cork's going to turn up, we don't really know, and Tyrone will be wary of them because Cork have tended in the past to turn up against Tyrone.
Just one last one before we let you go, and then it's on Laois versus Monaghan. Like, when you look at Monaghan, getting to an All-Ireland semi-final will be a step forward for them this year, and you feel that there is a huge opportunity for them this year, because if they get to the Super 8s, if they beat Laois at the weekend, which of course is another big if, we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but their game in Croke Park will be against the winner of that Fermanagh against Kildare game. Again, they'll fancy themselves in, despite their record in Croke Park. And then they get a game up in Clonus against, who's it going to be against? It's going to be against Kerry up in Clonus if they get to the Super 8. So that's the one environment where they feel they could beat a team like Kerry, is up in Clonus. And therefore, this is the 1 year where Monaghan could think, right, we can finally break our duck and finally get into the last four.
Absolutely, you've hit the nail on the head. So Monaghan are a brilliant league team against any top team in the country. Monaghan in the league is a difficult proposition. Monaghan have always failed in that big championship game in Croke Park in the quarter-final stage, and now suddenly the quarter-final stage is actually a mini-league, which suits Monaghan down to the ground. And there is teams on their side that they will certainly, like Galway and Kerry, they're used to playing them teams in Division 1 and having an excellent record against them. So Monaghan will see a big opportunity. The difficulty for Monaghan will be that they have played Waterford and Leitrim to date in the back door. Now, whenever you get beat in the provincial championship, you want a chance to regroup. You want a chance for your players to gain confidence progressing through the back door. You want the team to be able to work on their systems. But Monaghan, having defeated Leitrim and Waterford, really, what will they have learned? Any player that has played well in them games, there will be a big asterisk beside that confidence, because they'll know they haven't really come up against anybody. So Fermanagh Monaghan won't have gained a huge amount in terms of development through the qualifiers, and they should again take care of Laois. Like, Laois have had a very good year, but they're still a Division 4 side promoted to Division 3. It'll not be particularly easy for Monaghan, but you still expect Monaghan to come through, and again, they haven't really played anything of substantial quality then through the back door to prepare themselves for the Super 8. But with that, they'll know that the Super 8 this year, more than any of their previous quarter-final appearances, gives them a massive opportunity to reach the semi-final.
And great stuff. Thanks very much for joining us this morning.
All right, man.
We'll look forward to those games a little bit more over the course of the next 24 or 48 hours. So here on offtheball.com, check out all the stuff that we do as well. Now, a reminder that OTB AM is live with Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products. Richard Cooper was back in studio with us earlier on this week. He brought Kevin Kilban with him all the way from Russia.
I think Kevin has a really hard time saying stuff, doesn't he, without actually smiling. He's just always smiling, isn't he? Like, no matter what. I think he's always so nice about people that even if he was asked about like Donald Trump, he'd probably say, "Yeah, but you can see it from his point of view, though." I think Trump's a bit. I think he's been given too hard a time. I do.
He's just a very happy man. He lives a good life.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear him singing Sinn Féin or on the Féin, just in his accent, because he used to sing it all the time.
He did. He did. To be fair to him.
Sinn Féin fall. Till on the grosta, till tin a lot. They might go into sort of an Irish prayer or whatever.
He's a happy man despite the fact his heart is broken and Mayo are out of this tournament.
But still, he can probably understand that why they're out. Like why the opposition want to beat them. Because he's a fair bloke.
Kildare have done well.
Check out more from Richard, of course, on all of our social channels. You can get them youtube.com/offtheball or @offtheball on Twitter and Facebook as well. There you go.
There you go, indeed, yeah.
I don't think that these games in the qualifiers, I don't know what to make of them. Heavy favourites in all of the games. Kildare are heavy favourites, Tyrone are heavy favourites, Monaghan are heavy favourites, and I'm just not sure that all of these games are going to go. Roscommon are pretty heavy favourites against Armagh as well. And you know,
yeah, like you look
no
at
upsets.
The thing is, you look at all the kind of underdogs there: Fermanagh, Cork, Armagh, and Laois. And ironically, 3 of them are provincial losers, like which is very unusual that they would be the 3 underdogs going into 4 of these games. And you can see the potential. You can make a case for a shock in each and every one of those games. Now, that would suggest that there is going to be one shock, and probably one shock only. And you look at it and you think Armagh is probably the more likely of all of them to actually...
Niall McCoy makes a very good case for Fermanagh. It's like the Kildare not that good against this style of defence already in the championship this season. Fermanagh better than the Carlow team who managed to beat Kildare. Kildare struggled through against Longford, who are no great shakes, and against Derry, who are in a bit of a crisis at the moment. And
well, the Carlow thing is the big worry for Kildare, the way that defence managed to gobble them up, and Fermanagh execute that even better than Carlow. So what's Cian O'Neill learned from that Carlow match in Tullamore would be the big question.
Yeah.
And we'll get an answer to that as we get. Like, is it actually a shock if Fermanagh beat Kildare? Like, I would say that's probably actually the most even line when it comes to odds ahead of the weekend, Fermanagh versus Kildare. Is it unusual that it's in Navan? Is it, like when it comes to travelling support and all that?
Oh, you mean is it unfair that it's
unfair,
closer to Kildare than it is to...
It's certainly closer to Newbridge than it is to Enniskillen.
To Fermanagh, is it?
Of course it is. It's literally a border county of Meath, isn't it? Kildare, no, you got to go through Dublin to get to Meath.
No, around Maynooth there's like the 3 counties touch.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, is it about an hour to Navan? Is it about an hour and a half from Enniskillen?
That extra half an hour can make all the difference, Ger.
Yeah, it's a spiritual thing. You see everybody in the papers going, "Whoa, Kildare, you celebrating on the pitch, can't be doing that." That's like tempting fate there now. You big time Charlies after that one win. Newbridge and Nowhere's great one week, but it's almost like you're the only one thinking this and everybody's thinking the same thing, so therefore everybody's thinking it. It's like, well, okay, it's not a surprise anymore that Fermanagh might have the ability to get the jump.
Yeah, like... Without question. I think the celebration on the pitch, though, there was a sense that this could be the last time we get to celebrate in Conduit's Park before the end of the year. Like, I'm sure that there was a realisation that...
Well, now after we beat, who are we playing in if we win? Who are we playing in St. Conduit's Park?
Galway, I think, isn't it?
Okay. Might be the last time we get to celebrate.
Yeah.
We all go away.
Well, I mean, in terms of this weekend, I think there was a realisation that there was a strong provincial final loser coming down the track, so...
All right.
It's a good day out.